Have you ever stopped and wondered how much of the ocean we actually understand? We map planets millions of miles away, yet beneath the waves of our own world lies a darkness we barely know for centuries. Sailors have returned from long voyages shaken and silent swearing. They saw shapes moving under their ships, massive, shadows that followed them for miles. Stories like these were laughed off as fear and imagination, until fossils began surfacing. Strange sounds were recorded and scientists admitted something unsettling. We have explored less than 20% of the ocean. Today I am going to show you 10 legendary sea creatures we were told were only myths, but evidence suggests some of them may have been real and others might still be alive. Half of these legends have appeared before, but the rest are discoveries that change everything, and you need to stay until the very end. Because the final creature is not just a monster, it is a warning. The ocean does not scream, it waits. And when it reminds use of its power, it does not ask for permission. Number 10, Godzilla. When people hear the name Godzilla, they think of movies, explosions, and cities being crushed. But Godzilla was never just a monster made for entertainment. He was born from fear, real human fear. In post-war Japan, the ocean was no longer peaceful. Nuclear tests had scarred the water. Fishing boats returned contaminated, and an invisible enemy poisoned the sea. Out of that fear, Godzilla was created, a creature taller than skyscrapers, covered in armor like scales, a tail powerful enough to flatten buildings, and a roar that sounded like the end of the world. Godzilla was not evil. He was nature taking revenge. The first film released in 1954, audiences were silent because they understood the message. This was not fantasy, this was a warning. Godzilla represented what happens when humans disturb forces they cannot control. Radiation, the ocean, nature itself. Over time, his image changed. A destroyer became a guardian, fighting other titans, Mothra, King Ghidorah, even King Kong, his spiked back glowing, his footsteps shaking the earth. His roar became so iconic it was legally protected. Godzilla became global, a symbol recognized everywhere. But here's where things become uncomfortable, because something like Godzilla actually existed. Scientists discovered fossils of a massive prehistoric sea creature, Patagodatem majorum, a titan stretching over 36 meters long, weighing more than 10 elephants combined. This was not a myth. This was not a movie. This was real. It lived on this planet. It moved, it hunted, it dominated its world. Movies turned Godzilla into fiction, but nature wrote the original script. A real-life giant that once ruled the earth and vanished. The ocean remembers what the land forgets. Number 9, Hydra. In ancient Greek mythology, the Hydra was a nightmare. A serpent-like monster that lived near water with many heads, and one horrifying ability: cut one head off, and 2 more would grow back. Its breath was poison, its blood was lethal. Even touching it meant death. The hero Hercules was sent to kill it, and nearly failed because brute force was useless. Only fire stopped the heads from regenerating. This battle became legend, painted on walls, carved into stone, pressed into coins. The Hydra became a symbol, an enemy that could not be defeated the normal way. But myths have a strange habit. They exaggerate real things, because a real Hydra exists. Not large, not terrifying, not visible to the naked eye at first glance. This Hydra is smaller than a grain of rice, living quietly in fresh water, using tiny stinging arms to catch prey. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in something far more disturbing. It does not age. Scientists observed it closely. They damaged it, they cut it, they tried to force it to die. It regenerated every single time. Its cells renew endlessly, never breaking down, never slowing, never aging in laboratory conditions. This tiny Hydra showed no biological limit to its lifespan. In other words, it may be immortal. Ancient storytellers imagined a monster that could not be killed. Modern science discovered a creature that may never die. The myth exaggerated its size, but underestimated its power, because eternal life is far more terrifying than fangs. Nature did not create a beast with many heads. It created something far stranger, a creature that ignores time. And if something that small can escape death, what else in the ocean might be doing the same? Number 8, Jormungandr. In Norse mythology, there is a creature so large that even the gods feared it. They called him Jormungandr. The Midgard serpent legends say he was born to Loki alongside Fenrir the wolf and Hel the ruler of the dead. When the gods learned of these children, they felt something was wrong, something dangerous. Odin did not kill the serpent. Instead, he threw it into the ocean, believing the sea would be its prison, but the ocean did not cage the serpent. It fed him. Jormungandr grew and grew until his body wrapped around the entire world, biting his own tail, holding humanity inside his endless coils. Sailors believed storms were caused by his movement, earthquakes by his shifting body, and the end of the world would begin. The moment he released his tail during Ragnarok, the final battle, Thor himself faces Jormungandr against Venom. Hammer against Fangser kills the serpent, but only takes 9 steps before collapsing poison fills his body. God and monster fall. Together, this story was never meant to comfort. It was meant to warn, because the sea was never empty, and then fossils appeared, remains of an ancient sea serpent, Palaeophis colosseus. A real creature that lived millions of years ago. It stretched nearly 50 feet long with a body built for water, not land to ancient people. Finding bones like these would have been terrifying. Long curved vertebrae, too large to belong to any known animal. It would not look like a whale or a fish or a snake. They recognized it. Would look like proof that the serpent existed. Myths often begin with fear, but they survived because something real once stood behind them. Number 7, the bloop in 1997. Sensors deep in the Pacific Ocean detected a sound, not a normal sound, not an earthquake, not a volcanic eruption. The sound was powerful, low frequency, and traveled across thousands of kilometers. Scientists called it the bloop. Sound was so loud that if it came from a living creature, that creature would need to be far larger than a blue whale. The internet exploded with theories. A modern sea monster, an unknown giant, something hiding in the deep. For years, the mystery grew. Eventually, scientists suggested a solution: melting Antarctic icebergs, cracking and shifting underwater, and officially the case was closed. The idea never truly died, because prehistoric oceans were once filled with monsters, creatures like Leedsichthus, a massive fish larger than a bus, with a mouth so wide it could swallow sharks, whole creatures whose bodies were built to survive pressure, cold, and darkness. The ocean today is quieter, but it is also deeper, and sound behaves strangely underwater. So the question remains, was the bloop ice, or was it something we were never meant to hear? Number 6, Scylla. In Greek mythology, there was a place sailors feared more than storms, a narrow stretch of sea, with death on both sides. On one side, Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that swallowed ships whole on the other side. Scylla was not huge, but she was efficient. 6 long necks, each ending in a mouth full of sharp teeth, each head acting independently. She did not attack ships. She harvested them, snatching sailors from decks one by one before anyone could react. Legends say Scylla was once a beautiful nymph loved by the sea god, but cursed by jealousy. Beauty turned into horror, forever bound to her rock. But Homer placed her somewhere real, the Strait of Messina between Sicily and Italy, a place known for violent currents, strange waves, and unusual sea life. Sailors navigating those waters could have seen giant squid arms breaking the surface, long oarfish twisting through waves, crab-like shapes clinging to rocks. Fear stitches images together. Scylla may not have been one creature, but many encounters remembered as one, a monster built from survival stories, and that makes her far more believable. Number 5, the Loch Ness Monster. For centuries, people living near Loch Ness have told the same story. A long dark shape moving slowly beneath the water, a neck rising where no animal should exist, a presence that disappears the moment you focus on it. These sightings did not start with cameras. They started with fear and curiosity. Ancient texts mention a water beast attacking swimmers. Local legends passed from family to family. Long before tourism ever existed in the modern era, photos appeared. Blurry shapes, ripples that looked unnatural. A head and neck silhouette frozen in time. Scientists arrived with sonar, with underwater drones. With high-powered scans, they mapped the lake again and again. Nothing conclusive was found, so most experts agree the Loch Ness Monster is not alive today. But that is not the end of the story, because millions of years ago, a creature very similar did exist. The plesiosaur marine reptile with 4 powerful flippers, a broad body, and a neck so long it looked unreal. It was not a dinosaur, but it lived alongside them, dominating the oceans. For over 100 million years, its fossilized skeleton looks disturbingly familiar. The same body shape, the same long neck, the same silent glide through water. When ancient people discovered bones like these, they would not think extinction, they would think survival to them. The lake monster was not impossible. It was expected. Some believe early fossil discoveries near Scotland were misinterpreted as proof feeding. Legends that never faded. Others argue misidentified animals, logs, wave patterns, or large eels. But here is the unsettling part. Loch Ness is deep, cold, and dark, with layers of water rarely disturbed. If something wanted to stay hidden, it chose the right place. Number 4, Megalodon. Bore humans. Before history, before memory, there was a king of the ocean, Megalodon, a shark so massive that modern great white sharks look small by comparison. It grew over 80 feet long. Its weight matched dozens of cars. Combined, its jaws opened wide enough to swallow a vehicle whole. One bite could crush bone metal, and fear its teeth were the size of human hands. Serrated, perfect, built to kill whales, and it did. Fossilized Megalodon teeth have been found everywhere. From deep sea trenches to mountain ranges, from Asia to the Americas. This tells us something important. This creature ruled the entire planet. Then one day it vanished. Official science says Megalodon went extinct around 2 million years ago due to climate change, cooling oceans, and competition. The rise of faster, smarter predators. Like the great white shark, Megalodon was powerful, but it was slow. It required enormous amounts of food, thousands of pounds every single day. As prey became scarce, the giant faded, but the story refuses to end because some fossil teeth appear unusually well preserved, not mineralized the way ancient fossils should be. In 2012, researchers reported sightings of an enormous shadow beneath a vessel measured at over 60 feet long, moving slowly, deliberately. No species could be identified. Years later, hundreds of deep-sea shark teeth were recovered near Australia. Some belonging to species believed to descend directly from Megalodontus reignited the question if the ocean still supports giant whales, if deep-sea ecosystems remain unexplored, if over 80% of the ocean remains unseen. Could something that big still survive? A Megalodon did not need shallow waters. It thrived in the deep, in darkness and silence. Hollywood portrays it as a giant great white, fast and aggressive. Reality may have been worse, say slower, smarter, more patient hunter, one that does not chase, but waits. If something like Megalodon still exists, it does not announce itself, does not breach, it does not roar. It stays where light cannot reach, and that is where humans never look for too long. Number 3, Mingin. In the early 2000s, Japanese research vessels operating near Antarctica began reporting something unusual. Crew members spoke quietly at first. Long, pale shapes moving beside the ship, too smooth to be ice, too large to be seals. They called it Ningen, which simply means human, because whatever they saw had arms, long, unnatural arms, extending from a massive white body. Descriptions varied. Some said it had a humanoid face, others said it looked like a mermaid, but all agreed on one detail: it moved intelligently. Soon images appeared online, blurry, distant, controversial. Most were declared fake. Others dismissed as ice formations or whales caught at the wrong angle. But Antarctica is not normal ocean. It is vast, cold, and barely explored. Large regions remain completely unmapped. Underwater mountain ranges, deep trenches, and ecosystems sealed beneath ice for millions of years. Scientists admit this openly, and that is where Mingen refuses to disappear. Some researchers believe sightings could be misidentified animals, unknown whale species, or deformed giants adapted to polar water. Others point to something stranger: fossils of ancient marine mammals like Thalassocnus, a swimming sloth with long arms built for cold coastal waters. Its remains have been found in South America, not far from Antarctica. Another theory links Ningen to an ancient shark, Achilolomna, a bizarre species with wing-like fins stretching wide from its body. It moves slowly, gracefully, silently, perfect. For deep water, official records say it went extinct during the Great Mass Extinction. But shark survivors, they lived before trees, before dinosaurs, before continents took their current shape. They survived global disasters, ice ages, and ocean collapse. The idea that something adapted, changed, and hid is not impossible. What makes Ningen disturbing is not proof. But pattern sightings cluster in the same regions, descriptions repeat the same features, and witnesses gain nothing from speaking, no fame. No reward, only ridicule, which is often where the truth hides. Number 2, the sea eater. This is not a legend you hear in school. It does not belong to one culture or one time. It appears again and again under different names in different oceans always. Described the same way: too big to measure, too big to fight, too big to understand. Sailors did not describe it attacking. They described it swallowing entire ships, waves, even islands. Witnesses said it did not chase. It drifted, its mouth open, pulling the sea into itself. Some accounts describe it as kilometers long. Others say it was wider than cities. The numbers change. The fear does not. They called it the sea eater. Its body was said to be covered in thick, dark skin, like a whale, but harder, almost rubbery. Water flowed through it, as if it was part of the ocean itself. The most terrifying detail: its arms, not flesh, but bones, massive limbs formed from the remains of crushed sea creatures. Whales, sharks, unknown things. These arms dragged it along the ocean floor, or reached upward when it fed. People who claimed to see it did not scream. They froze. Their accounts speak of silence, a pressure in the chest, a sense of being insignificant. In one story, a woman resting on a beach described a moving mountain approaching the shore. No sound, no splash, just motion. She ran and never returned to that coasting. Another, a fishing boat vanished after a dark shape surfaced beneath it. No wreckage, no survivors. Old records describe massive waves following sightings, floods that lasted decades. Coastlines erase. Modern science rejects these accounts, calling them exaggeration. Fear, myth, but something strange remains. These stories exist across cultures that never met. Pirate logs, ancient religious texts, stone carvings. Creatures large enough to swallow the world. In some traditions, it was Leviathan. In others, a world serpent. In others, a god of punishment, always tied to the sea, always appearing before a disaster. If such a creature existed, it would not come near land. Shallow water would damage its body. It would stay deep, cold, hidden, and if it ever rose, not to hunt, but to move. The ocean itself would follow. The sea eater may not be real, but the fear it represents is that something out there is too big to fight, too big to stop. And if it ever wakes fully, there would be no warning, only water. Number 1, the ghost whale. For centuries, whales were not hunted in Japan. They were honored when it washed ashore. Villages gathered, prayers were spoken, ceremonies were held. The whale was treated as a gift from the sea. Every part was used. Nothing wasted, because the whale was believed to carry a soul. This respect created balance the sea provided. Humans thanked it, but that balance did not last as time passed. Whales stopped being sacred. They became profit. Industrial ships replaced small boats. Harpoons replaced prayers. Factories replaced gratitude. By the 20th century, millions of whales had vanished. Their songs disappeared. Their migration paths went silent. And the ocean changed. That is when the stories returned along the coast of Japan. Fishermen began whispering about something impossible: a whale made of bone, glowing white in the dark sea, sailing through storms without sound. They called it Big Kajura, the ghost whale. According to legend, it appeared before disasters, famine, fire, plague. When hunters threw harpoons, the weapons passed through its body as if it was not fully there, and when it vanished, misfortune followed. One story tells of fishermen near the Oki Islands, caught in a violent storm, rain cutting sideways, waves climbing like walls in the chaos. A massive shape rose from the water. No flesh, no eyes, only glowing bones. The men froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. The whale drifted past them, silent, untouchable. Weeks later, their village suffered fire's illness and hunger. To many, Big Kajura was not a monster. It was a consequence. In Japanese belief, any being that dies unjustly, without respect, can return as a restless spirit, not to kill, but to remind. Some scholars believe the ghost whale was born from guilt, a collective memory of what was taken too far. Others argue the sightings were misidentified skeletons or mass hallucination caused by fear and loss. But the symbolism remains powerful today. The oceans are warmer, louder, filled with plastic and noise. Whales beach themselves more often. Navigation systems fail. Ecosystems collapse. Big Kajura feels less like a myth and more like a message not about revenge. But warning throughout history, every sea legend we have discussed follows the same pattern humans. Disturb the ocean, something responds sometimes as a monster, sometimes as a sound, sometimes as a shadow, and sometimes as a memory that refuses to die. Godzilla was born from nuclear fear, the Hydra from immortality, Jormungandr from ancient bones, the Bloop from unexplained sound, Scylla from survival terror, Ness from fossil memory, Megalodon from extinction doubt, Ningen from polar mystery. The sea eater from existential dread, and the ghost whale from guilt legends are not random. They are reflections. The ocean does not create myths. Humans, Dodo, explain what they cannot control, what they cannot stop, what they cannot escape. We like to believe monsters are gone, that science has replaced fear, but the truth is, we have explored less than a fraction of the deep. There are trenches deeper than mountains, are tall ecosystems untouched by light. Creatures adapted to pressure that would crush us instantly if something ancient survived, if something learned to hide, if something waited we would not see. Coming the ocean would change first the waves, the currents, the silence, and then we would remember the stories. Too late, because legends do not exist to scare us. They exist to prepare us. The sea has always been watching, and it has never needed our permission. If you think these are only myths, the next part will change your mind, because the creatures that follow are not from stories. They are from science, and science still does not have answers. The creatures science cannot explain up. To now, everything you heard lives somewhere between myth and memory, legends shaped by fear stories, passed through generations, but now we step into a darker space, because these creatures are not ancient stories. They are modern discoveries, recorded, measured, and still unexplained. These are not monsters from mythology. They are anomalous creatures that science has seen but cannot fully understand. This is where the ocean becomes uncomfortable. First, the giant squid. For centuries, sailors described enormous tentacles wrapping around ships, pulling wooden men into the deep. Science laughed. There was no proof, only stories. Then bodies began washing ashore, real giant squids, longer than buses, eyes the size of dinner plates, arms lined with suction cups strong enough to tear flesh. They were not rare myths, they were real animals in the most disturbing detail. They were never seen alive until recently. Deep sea cameras finally captured one moving, silent, watching. Aware of something that large hid from us for centuries. What else still does? Second, the goblin shark. This creature looks unfinished. Like evolution forgot to stope a long, flat snout, pink, translucent skin, and jaws that launch forward like a trap at lives. So deep that sunlight never touches it. Scientists rarely encounter it, and when they do not know how old it is, how long it lives, or how many exist. It looks ancient, like a survivor from another world, which may be exactly what it is. Third, the Borelli fichet, small creature, but terrifying in a different way. Its head is transparent, completely clear. You can see its brain, its eyes, and its thoughts moving. Its eyes do not face forward. They point upward, watching for silhouettes above predators. Or prey lives in the deep twilight zone where light barely survives, a place humans cannot endure. If something so fragile adapted to that darkness, what could something stronger become? Fourth, the deep sea anglerfish. This creature lives where pressure crushes steel, where light does not exist, creates its own light, a glowing lure dangling in front of its face to attract victims. But the true horror is hidden. The male anglerfish, once he finds a female, he bites her and never lets go. His body fuses into hers. His organs dissolve until only his reproductive cells remain. He stops being an individual. He becomes a function. This is not myth. This is biology, and it exists right now below us. Fifth, the black swallower fish, capable of eating prey larger than itself, much larger. It stretches bones, separating organs, shifting until it becomes a living bag. Sometimes it miscalculates, swallowing something too big, and both predator and prey die, found floating, bloated, broken, a reminder that survival in the deep has no mercy. Now imagine this. These are only the creatures we know. Every year new species are discovered, new shapes, new behaviors. Some look impossible, some look ancient, some look artificial, and all of them come from places humans cannot stay. deep ocean is not empty. It is crowded with things adapted to pressure, darkness, and silence conditions that would destroy us if something larger, older, smarter learned to survive there. It would not need to hide. We simply would not belong in. People say monsters are not real. They're thinking of teeth and claws, but real monsters are better adapted, better designed, better hidden. They do not roar. They do not attack cities. They exist patient, unnoticed until they surface. And when they do, we give them names and call them legends, because accepting the truth is harder. The ocean has never been fully conquered. Only visited, it decides what we are allowed to see. Everything else it keeps. What lies below everything you have heard so far leads to one truth. The ocean is not mysterious because it is empty. It is mysterious because it is alive in ways we barely understand. Humans like to believe we are explorers, that we have seen everything worth seeing, but the truth is simple. We are surface dwellers. Our cities float on a thin layer of certainty. Beneath it lies pressure, darkness, and time. Creatures down there do not live like us. They do not think like us. They do not need light, sound, or warmth. They evolved in silence. There are regions of the ocean deeper than Mount Everest is tall, places where temperature never changes, where no current disturbs the water, where oxygen barely exists, and yet life thrives. Not familiar life, but adapted life in these zones. Scientists have detected movement, heat signatures, unidentified biological activity. Not ghosts, not legends, something alive. Submersibles have recorded shapes too large to fully capture masses that move out of frame. Before size can be calculated, not aggressive, not curious, aware. Some researchers believe there are ecosystems isolated for millions of years, cut off from the surface world, evolving independently. In such environments, size becomes irrelevant, age becomes meaningless, and survival favors patience. If something ancient survived mass extinctions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, it would not look like anything we know, would not rise to the surface. It would not leave fossils easily. It would live where nothing hunts it. The deepest trenches, when unusual sounds are recorded, they are not repeated. When shapes are seen, they vanish, as if the ocean chooses what it reveals. This is why legends never fully disappear. They adapt. A sea serpent becomes a fossil, a ghost. Whale becomes a warning. A monster becomes a data anomaly. We change the words, but the fear remains, because fear is a memory passed down from ancestors who knew something lived out there, something larger, older, and not concerned with us. The ocean does not hate humanity. It simply does not notice us, and that may be the most terrifying thought of all. If one day something rises, not to attack, not to invade, but simply to exist closer to the surface, we would call it a monster, not because it is evil, but because it reminds us we are not in control. Every deep-sea expedition uncovers new species. Every year something impossible is cataloged. Every time scientists say the same thing, we did not expect this. So ask yourself if we are still discovering creatures today. What did we miss before cameras, before sonar, before science? What survived quietly, watching, waiting? The ocean does not forget. It stores bones, sound, stories, and sometimes it lets one escape. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, if these stories made you think twice about what lies beneath the waves, then make sure you subscribe, because this channel is not about fantasy. It is about the questions science has not answered yet, and there are many more waiting below.